So in this video, we're going to talk about Ailis Ni Riain's play Desolate Heaven. Now, I'll first off say, I'm sure I mispronounced that name. I don't speak Irish. I apologize. So, Desolate Heaven. This is ultimately a very sad play, but it's an innovative play in that when this was first produced in 2013, LGBT issues were still comparatively rare on the Irish stage or in Irish mass media more generally, because Ireland is a very traditionally strong Catholic country, the Republic of Ireland, that is. And so LGBT rights have only been fairly recently embraced in Ireland. But as far as I can tell, they've been embraced pretty wholeheartedly. So, fair play to you, Republic of Ireland, for that. So, Desolate Heaven. This follows two children, Orla and Siv, sorry. Orla is 13, Siv is 12. They have, despite being children, they have been forced into the roles of carers for their disabled parents. Orla's father, who is not 100% clear what exactly is wrong with him, whether it's purely a psychological issue or whether he's experienced a physical injury or something like this. And Siv, I'm not sure. I actually think it's Sive. I want to continue pronouncing it that way. Sive, her mother was in a car wreck that crushed her pelvis and broke her back, and so she is more or less bedridden in constant pain. And so Orla and Sive have to continually take care of their parents, forcing them into adult roles despite being children. Both of them have a strong desire to escape, and so it's actually quite fitting that the play begins on a beach. Not a good beach, but a beach nonetheless. They start, let me look up the name of the beach. Ballyglana. I don't know if that's a real beach or not, but the beach is a liminal space, right? It's a space between the ocean and the land that isn't quite either, and it kind of moves back and forth, or portions of the beach at least move back and forth between ocean and land as the tide goes in and comes out, right? So this idea of transition, of a liminal space where you can move between one state and another, childhood, adulthood, parent-child, these kinds of things, is really well sort of symbolically set up by the opening scene of this play on the beach. Incidentally, the last scene of the play also takes place on a beach. So, Orla and Sive decide that they're going to run away together to sort of escape their responsibilities, to find freedom, maybe in some ways to become more adult, although they seem to be quite adult as it is, considering that they are in the roles of carers for the parents who otherwise ostensibly should be taking care of them. So, they do run away. And they don't really have that much of a plan. They're just sort of wandering through Ireland, but they meet a series of women who are eccentric and unique and sort of live life on their own terms. And the particular jobs that these women do. We have Frida, who's this sort of weird farmer who's obsessed with trimming hay bales so that they're perfect, rather than having just sort of loose pieces of hay stuck out. we have Lisha, who drives a truck. And we have Britty the Butcher. So these are three odd women. They each have their own unique proclivities and eccentricities and ways of looking at the world. And so within the plot of the play, within the plot of Desolate Heaven, they each assist Orla and Sive on their way. They each help the girls. They give them food. They often give them money. They give them shelter, things like this. So they are patrons in that sense. Like, they help out. Then you've got the sort of symbolic function that these women represent. They each expand the boundaries of what Orla and Sive believe is the proper role of women. So in this case, you have the two girls who start with a fairly traditional role of traditional idea of what women should be. This is a very, again, Ireland was traditionally a very strongly Catholic country. The Republic of Ireland, strongly Catholic country. Catholicism has reasonably well-defined gender roles and expectations. The three women that Orla and Sive meet reframe those expectations. They expand the boundaries of what women can do. They can be truck drivers. They can be farmers in their own right, as opposed to like a farmer's wife. They can be butchers, things like this. So they can do these jobs. They can have this kind of freedom that Orla and Sive's previous lives did not kind of allow them. Now, the one sort of wrinkle to that is that Orla is a tomboy. She's fairly masculine. Often less so than she pretends to be, but she does have certain sets of skills and abilities that help the girls out. Things like being able to build a fire. Sive, for her part, the younger girl, is more shy and traditionally feminine. As they are going through their various adventures, there's two sort of trains of things that occur. One is that each of the women tells them part of the same fairy tale. It's a fairy tale in which a poor woman wants to get her beautiful but lazy daughter married to the prince. The queen wants her son to marry an industrious, beautiful woman, so the poor widow says, "Yeah, my daughter, she's just sad because there's no more spinning to do right now, because she loves to spin cloth, or she loves to spin wool into thread, whatever it is. I don't know from spinning. I'm not a weaver, but this is the story." And Frida tells the first portion of it, Leisha tells the second portion of it, and Britty tells the third portion of it. And basically, the core element of the story is that over a series of 3 nights, the queen gives the girl, the daughter, a bunch of flax to spin into cloth or thread or whatever it is. The girl doesn't want to do this. She hates working. So a fairy shows up on each night. First one with giant feet, the second one with giant hips, the third one with a giant nose. So they show up on the 3 consecutive nights and say, "Hey, I'll spin all that into some amazing cloth if you invite me to your wedding. And she's like, fucking hell yeah. I don't have to do any work. I don't give a fuck if you're at my wedding. So that's what happens. Finally, the day of the wedding comes. The queen has been super impressed. The three fairies show up, and they're all bulbousy or whatever it is, and Prince is like, what the hell happened to you to make you all so weird looking? And they're like, that's a life spent at the loom, baby. And the prince is like, oh, I'm not going to have my beautiful wife all mangled and fucked up like this. Wife, you will never work again. So everybody gets what they want, I guess. It's just, it's an odd kind of story. And the happily ever after is, beautiful, lazy princess is married to a prince who doesn't want her to work. So that's one of the things that occurs. My cat is I think, trying to make for my laundry basket to have a nap. He was screaming before over in the other room. I don't know if the mic picked that up. Probably not. But so that's one of the things that occurs throughout. And so it is this very traditional fairy tale, right? In the sense that it has a poor girl marrying a handsome prince. The happily ever after is heterosexual monogamous marriage. What seems to sort of turn with the fairy tale is that typically, right, in fairy tales, characters representing positive traits, hi Frank, characters with positive traits tend to be rewarded, whereas characters with negative traits like laziness or trickery tend not to be rewarded. And in this case, we have quite the opposite. So that's one of the threads. This narrative that does reflect those traditional gender roles, but also turns them in an odd way. And in a sense, that's what Desolate Heaven does as well. So the other through line is the developing awareness of sexuality on the part of these two girls. Orla seems more directly to accept her same-sex desire for Sive. Sive doesn't seem to fully conceptualize what's going on. I think it is worth remembering that these girls are 13 and 12. So this is, like the beach, a kind of liminal aspect where they're moving from childhood to adulthood. They develop a relationship because Brittany, the third of the women that they meet, is basically like, yeah, I've got a cottage that nobody lives in. You can go chill there and totally just live your lives. Brittany, incidentally, it's implied, had an unfulfilled lesbian relationship when she was younger, and that the failed potential of that relationship does seem to lead to her decision to give these two girls access to the cottage. In that space, initially, this is their sort of heaven. This is their heavenly space where they can live together. They can be physically intimate in ways that are sometimes seem pleasant and sometimes seem a bit coerced on Orla's part. So we have it's a difficult situation to read. I think the way that it would be performed would tell you a lot about this relationship. But one of the things we do find out is that Orla herself is a victim of sexual assault. It sounds like repeated, regular sexual assault, by the group of boys that she had hung around with. That her friends who she hung around with basically forced her to perform oral sex on them against her will. And she turns that anger both toward boys in general, but also toward herself. Like, she's clearly very angry at herself for having allowed this to happen, perhaps, or and I'm not saying that's what really occurred, because that's bullshit. Someone who is a victim of sexual assault has not allowed something to occur, but often that's a way that victims of sexual assault perceive what occurred, is that they somehow allowed it or invited it or didn't struggle enough or whatever it is. And that's wrong. That's not the way that sexual assault works. But Orla seems to have internalized her anger to a certain extent, and it seems most likely to me that there is a sense of guilt, a sense that she somehow invited this or allowed this to happen. That model of sort of violent sexuality and the jealousy that Orla feels as Sive becomes sort of more feminine, more adult, and like goes out to the shop and buys bread from a shop where a boy works as the cashier or whatever it is. Those things, her sort of jealousy, her desire to be safe and have that sort of safe relationship, and the model of sexuality associated with violence sort of coalesces in the culmination of the play, in which Orla feels that Sive is drifting away from her. Sive has expressed a desire to go back home and just sort of check on her mom to make sure that her mom is okay. Incidentally, Orla does know, because Britti has told her, that Sive's mother died. She fell down the stairs trying to get down the stairs on her own, and no one was there to help her, and so she did die. Orla decides not to tell Sive about that, so that she can keep Sive to herself. So again, we have some problematic elements to this relationship, but ultimately, Orla's anxiety about Sive leaving her culminates in this bit where Orla says, at the end of the play, they're back on a beach, by the way, she turns from me and slowly inches forward into the water as my heart stiffens with pain, and then I explode. Fall into the winds, bounding forward, forcing her head under the water, her long hair tangling round my fingers. I'm pushing her down as she's thrashing beneath me. Fingers held in pleasure, now clasped in pain, and my blasted heart's like a bass drum dull in my chest. She's struggling, putting up a fight as a rage bolts through me, and finally I have the force I need to hold her underwater long enough till the life seeps out of her. She stops thrashing, jolt by crooked jolt. So ultimately, Orla kills Sive, and the murdered lover storyline is actually a really common one in Irish and Scots-Irish, Scottish, and Appalachian, by extension, folk songs, ballads, poetry, things like this. The tale of the jealous lover who murders usually his beloved, since usually this is a man murdering a female beloved. This is a very, very common storyline in Irish music, literature, etc., etc. And here we have a twist on that, because it is the same-sex relationship, but it still fits that pattern of jealousy and of sexual violence.